Okay, so we're diving into Brené Brown's work with these excerpts you've got from The Gifts of Imperfection.
Right.
And, one of the things that I always find so fascinating about her work is how she kind of turns this whole idea of like pursuing perfection on its head.
Yeah, it's true.
Like we should be going for that.
It's not about that sort of checking all the boxes or achieving some kind of flawless ideal.
Hmm.
It's more about engaging authentically and vulnerably
Right.
and allowing ourselves to be seen even with the imperfections.
And that's the thing that I think is so interesting because I think so often you hear vulnerability and you don't necessarily equate that with strength.
Right.
But she really links that to those big things.
Yeah.
Courage and compassion and connection.
And she defines them so specifically. Like courage, for example, isn't about being fearless.
Right.
It's about showing up and letting ourselves be seen even when we're afraid.
So it's acting in spite of the fear, not in the absence of it.
Exactly. And
Okay.
she tells this great anecdote in the book about receiving just a scathing email
Oh, boy.
that just made her want to reply with all guns blazing.
Yeah.
But instead of reacting defensively, she chose a different path.
This is where it gets good.
Right.
Don't tell me she replied with a gif of a kitten giving the side eye.
No. She went even deeper than that.
Okay.
She responded to this highly critical email with vulnerability,
Wow.
acknowledging the hurt she felt from the sender's words. And this completely changed the dynamic.
Wow.
Instead of escalating the conflict, it opened the door for a more authentic and compassionate exchange.
So really putting it into practice.
Yeah,
Not just talking the talk, but walking the walk.
exactly.
Okay, so we're seeing how vulnerability can be a strength and how it leads to those gifts of courage and connection.
Yeah.
But what about the feeling of being enough?
Right.
Like, where does that fit into all of this?
Well, it's essential, and Brown's research shows how love, belonging, and feeling enough are all intricately connected.
Okay.
We can't experience true connection without first cultivating self-love and acceptance.
So we can't belong anywhere else until we belong within ourselves.
Exactly. And we can't truly belong if we're constantly hiding parts of ourselves or pretending to be someone we're not.
Right.
And that's where authenticity comes in, showing up as our true selves, even with our imperfections.
Okay, so that makes sense, but then why is it so hard for so many of us to live that way?
Well,
If it's that inherent, what gets in the way?
Brown identifies several barriers to wholehearted living.
Okay.
One of the biggest is perfectionism,
Right.
that nagging voice telling us we have to be perfect to be worthy of love and belonging.
Oh, I think we've all met that voice.
And then there's what Brown calls numbing,
Okay.
using things like work food or social media to avoid uncomfortable emotions.
Where do I sign up?
Right,
Been there, done
right.
that.
It's a common coping mechanism.
Right.
But Brown argues that by numbing those emotions, we're actually preventing ourselves from processing them and moving forward.
So it's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone.
Precisely. And then there's the need for certainty.
Okay.
We live in a culture that prizes predictability and control.
Right.
And so when things feel uncertain, it can be very anxiety-provoking.
And it's easy to think that if we just plan enough or control enough, that we can avoid all that.
Right. And finally, Brown talks about this idea of equating exhaustion with worthiness.
Yes.
It's like wearing busyness as a badge of honor.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm so busy equals I'm so important.
Exactly. And that can be incredibly damaging, both physically and emotionally.
Oh, for sure.
It's almost like we have this dig deep button that we're constantly pushing
Right.
and ignoring our body's cues to slow down, rest, and recharge.
So she's saying that we're wired to avoid the very things that bring us joy and connection and a sense of fulfillment.
It is kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
Yeah.
But the good news is that Brown doesn't just leave us with a list of problems.
Okay, good.
She offers a roadmap for change.
Okay, and that roadmap is where those 10 guideposts come in.
Exactly.
But I have to ask before we get into those, because we talked about this idea of letting go a lot, letting go of perfectionism and control and this need to be busy.
Right.
What are we making space for when we let go of all of that?
That is a fantastic question.
What's on the other side of that fear?
And it's one that Brown explores in detail throughout her work.
Okay.
To understand what we're making space for, we need to understand the guideposts themselves.
Okay, so 10 guideposts
Yeah.
for wholehearted living.
Yeah.
I mean, 10, that's a lot.
It's a journey, not a race.
Okay, good point.
She doesn't expect us to check all these off at once.
Okay.
It's more about finding the ones that resonate most strongly and starting there.
So finding the ones that speak to you and your life and your struggles.
Exactly. And even though they're listed separately, they're all interconnected. They kind of
Yeah.
build on each other.
So less checklist, more like Choose your own adventure.
Right, exactly.
So where do we even begin with, like, dismantling those barriers?
Well, she starts with cultivating authenticity,
Okay.
and she says that it's about letting go of what people think.
Oh, easier said than done.
Right, especially in the age of social media,
Oh, my God.
where we're constantly bombarded with messages about who we should be and what we should be doing.
Right, and what we should look like and what we should
So
sound like and all the things.
And it's not about becoming immune to what other people think
I get it.
because, we're wired for connection, so it's natural to care. But her research suggests that true belonging comes from authenticity, not from fitting in.
So being brave enough to be ourselves, even if it means not being liked by everyone,
Exactly.
which is a really scary thought for a lot of people.
It is, and Brown acknowledges that, it's not about being reckless with our vulnerability.
Right.
She actually emphasizes the importance of setting boundaries
Okay.
and sharing our stories with people who have earned the right to hear them.
Right.
People who've shown themselves to be trustworthy and supportive.
So being discerning with our vulnerability, not just like, throwing it out there to anybody
Exactly.
for the taking.
Exactly. And that actually ties into another guidepost, cultivating self-compassion.
Okay.
Which is all about letting go of perfectionism.
Oh. Okay, so we've talked about perfectionism as this barrier. So how does self-compassion kind of play into that?
Well, think about it this way. How would you talk to a good friend who is struggling?
Right.
Would you berate them for their mistake?
No,
Tell them they're not good enough?
of course not.
Right.
I would hope not.
Right.
I would try to be supportive and offer encouragement.
Exactly. And that's what Brown encourages us to do for ourselves.
Okay.
Self-compassion is about treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer a loved one.
But isn't there a difference between being self-compassionate and letting yourself off the hook?
Right.
Like, how do we know?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
It's a common misconception.
Okay.
Brown's work actually suggests that self-compassion makes us more resilient, not weaker.
Okay, how so?
It's about honesty. When we're self-compassionate, we can be more honest with ourselves about our limitations and our struggles,
Okay.
which allows us to set realistic expectations
Right.
and make choices that are truly aligned with our values.
So it's like giving ourselves permission to be human
Exactly.
with flaws and all, but then working with those flaws instead of against them.
Precisely. And that leads us to another guidepost that's about navigating life's challenges.
Okay.
Cultivating a resilient spirit,
Okay.
which Brown describes as letting go of numbing and powerlessness.
Well, is this about bouncing back from setbacks?
Yes,
Learning from our mistakes, that kind of thing.
exactly. Resilience is about recognizing that challenges are an inevitable part of life.
Okay.
And it's not about avoiding them. It's
Oh.
about developing the skills and mindset to navigate them in a healthy way.
But what about those times where you just want to curl up in a ball and
Ah.
hide from the world
Absolutely.
because something's happened and you just don't even,
It's important to acknowledge and process those difficult emotions.
right?
But Brown's research suggests that by leaning into that discomfort rather than trying to numb it, we actually build our capacity for resilience over time.
So it's like a muscle that gets stronger the more we use it.
Exactly. And the more resilient we become, the less those challenges have the power to derail us.
Okay, so cultivating a resilient spirit,
Yes.
really essential for navigating life's ups and downs.
Yes.
Giving me a lot to think about already.
Good.
So what's next on the roadmap?
Well, we're going to shift gears a little bit
Okay.
and talk about a couple of guideposts that are all about embracing the good stuff. Joy, gratitude, creativity,
Okay.
and even play.
Wait, play?
Yeah.
Like adult play?
Yes.
Brené Brown is giving us research-backed permission to have more fun.
She is.
Tell me everything. Okay, so tell me more about this whole permission to play thing,
Right.
because that feels almost radical, you know?
It does, doesn't it?
In a culture that's so obsessed with like productivity and,
Right.
always doing more.
But Brown's adamant that play is not frivolous.
Okay.
It's essential for creativity, connection, and well-being.
So it's not just about, feeling good. It's actually important for our mental and emotional health.
Exactly. When we engage in play, we tap into a sense of joy and freedom that can often get pushed aside as adults. Her research suggests that by reconnecting with that playfulness, we actually become more resilient,
Yeah.
more adaptable, and more creative in our problem solving.
Okay, that makes sense. And it makes me think about cultivating gratitude and joy.
Right.
How do those two work together?
Well, They're definitely intertwined.
Okay.
Gratitude is about appreciating those good things in our lives,
Right.
big or small, and recognizing that there's enough to go around.
Okay, so shifting our focus from what we lack to what we have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when we approach life from a place of gratitude, joy naturally follows.
So it's not that fleeting kind of happiness,
Yeah.
like a deeper sense of contentment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's more sustainable.
Okay.
It's more of a delight in the world around us.
And it makes me think about that quote that's like, joy is not a destination, it's a way of traveling, or something like that.
Yes.
So it's about finding those moments of joy in the everyday, even amidst,
Right.
life's challenges.
And Brown emphasizes that joy isn't something that just happens to us.
Okay.
It's something that we cultivate through the choices that we make and the actions that we take.
Okay.
So choosing to engage with the world, connect with others, appreciate the beauty around us.
Okay, so creating the conditions for joy to flourish.
Exactly.
It's a practice.
What about cultivating calm and stillness? Because that feels like a really tall order these days.
It does. It's essential, though, for counterbalancing that busyness
Right.
and finding a sense of inner peace.
Okay.
Brown's research shows that we often turn to anxiety as a coping mechanism.
We overplan. We're constantly like bracing for the next bad thing to happen.
Waiting for the other shoe to...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she encourages us to start to notice those patterns and to look for healthier ways to manage that stress and uncertainty.
Okay.
Things like mindfulness meditation, spending time in nature, all those things can help us reconnect to the present moment.
Right.
And find that sense of calm in the middle of all the chaos.
So just quieting that inner storm, even for a few minutes.
Yes, and that inner peace is essential for connecting with our intuition, which she talks about in cultivating intuition and trusting faith.
Intuition, that thing that we often ignore because it doesn't make logical sense.
Exactly. Our culture often prioritizes that rational mind.
Right.
But she argues that intuition is so valuable.
Yeah.
It's a source of wisdom that we often dismiss. And faith, as she defines it, is about letting go of the need for certainty.
So trusting ourselves.
Yes.
Trusting something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
And being okay with not having all the answers.
Yes. Surrendering to the unknown.
Wow.
Embracing the mystery.
Okay.
And having faith that even when things feel uncertain, we'll find our way.
So we've talked about authenticity and self-compassion, resilience,
Yeah.
gratitude, joy, playfulness, stillness, and intuition and faith.
We have.
What else?
Well, cultivating meaningful work is another important one, and she defines that really broadly. It's not just about our jobs.
Right.
It's about identifying and using our gifts and talents in any area of life.
So finding that sweet spot between our passions and our skills and using them to make a difference.
Exactly, and letting go of those messages we've internalized about what we should be doing or what success should look like.
It's about defining success on our own terms.
Yes, finding work that lights us up regardless of external validation.
I love that.
Right.
Okay, and last but not least, cultivating laughter, song, and dance.
Yes.
I love this one because it really just feels like embracing joy.
It does.
So full of...
Letting go of the need to be cool or in control and just embracing those joyful, expressive parts of ourselves.
Yes, life is meant to be celebrated, not just endured.
That's right.
And I think sometimes the most healing thing we can do is just laugh, sing, and dance like nobody's watching.
It's true, and it's important to remember that these guideposts aren't a one-time fix.
Okay.
They're an ongoing practice, a commitment to showing up for ourselves and others even when it's hard.
So it's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly. And the most important thing is to be kind to ourselves along the way.
So as we kind of wrap up our deep dive into Brené Brown's Gifts of Imperfection, what's the one thing you hope our listener takes away from this conversation?
I hope they take away that wholehearted living is a journey of self-discovery and growth.
Okay.
It's about embracing our imperfections, cultivating courage, compassion, and connection, and showing up authentically in the world.
Beautifully said. And I think it's important to remember that it's not about becoming somebody else. It's about becoming more fully ourselves.
Exactly.
And that journey starts with a single step.
It does.
So listener, what guidepost speaks to you most strongly right now? What one small act of courage or compassion or connection can you offer yourself today?
Right.
Remember, you are worthy of love and belonging just as you are.
And you don't have to walk this path alone. There's a whole community of wholehearted folks out there cheering you on every step of the way.
That is a beautiful note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us for this exploration of wholehearted living.
Thank you for having me.
And listener, until next time, keep diving deep.